Brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. We thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for giving us the opportunity to meet again today in this lecture on personal development. We have a good speaker, got many participants, and this is a series. We had one yesterday, today we have, and tomorrow we shall have. And then after a month or so, we shall invite you to more such programs. We are going to be very regular, inshallah. The speaker will speak, and you can write your questions in the chat. At the end of the talk, he will answer all questions that have been asked. When the set time of 1 hour is finished, those who are in a hurry can leave. Those who can wait can stay longer until he answers all the questions. Now it is my pleasure to introduce our speaker, Professor Jamal Ahmad Badi. He has a very illustrious academic career. We can only summarize. He is a scientist, and he knows science. He has training in psychology, and then he has also qualifications in Islamic studies and social sciences. He has a PhD in Usuluddin from the Islamic University of Medina, and he has been teaching creative thinking from an Islamic perspective as well as da'wah for over 20 years at the International Islamic University in Malaysia. He has written many books. He has also supervised many postgraduate students. And his contribution is immense because he's working in an area of thinking that very few people are working in. He has several books also, and later on, those interested, we can make arrangements for you to have access to them. Now I invite Professor Jamal Ahmad Badi to start his lecture on the encouragement of thinking in Islam. Dr. Jamal, تفضل مشكورا.
Start. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salamu ala Rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Allahumma allimna ma yanfa'una wa anfa'na bima 'allamtana wa zidna ilman ya dhal jalali wal ikram. Amin. Alhamdulillah, we have such a great audience, participants from different countries, from the Gulf area, I believe, from Bahrain maybe, and from India. We have so many, from Indonesia and from Malaysia as well, and from Nigeria, from Bangladesh. I would like to welcome all of you to this session, encouragement to thinking in Islam. And that is the first session in our series, as announced by Prof. Kasuli, Jazawallahu Khairan. I'd like to appreciate and to extend my appreciation to Prof. and his colleagues in Triple IT for enabling this program to come to existence. Alhamdulillah. Encouragement to thinking in Islam, how Islam encourages thinking is our main focus for today. The first thing is, when we talk about thinking, the Arabic term which has been used in Quran is tafakkur, or the derivatives of fa, kaf, ra, fakara. So it has been used 18 times. It has been used used 18 times in the Quran. Just thinking or tafakkar. يتفكرون تتفكرون أولم يتفكروا. So all these different derivatives are used 18 times in the Quran. Okay, and it has been used as a verb rather than a noun in all verses, which signifies the importance of practice, exercising thinking. It's not just encouraging thinking, but actually encouraging us all to practice it, to exercise it, as the Quran uses this kind of terms, the verb terms. And then also, the verb is used in present tense, al-fi'l al-mudari', where in all 17 times or places, except أَوَلَمْ يَتَفَكَّرُوا, that one is in past tense, but all the other 17 is used in present tense. So what is the implication? The implication here is that the continuity. So like not only we are encouraged to exercise or to practice thinking, rather than just also to do it all the time, which means that this indicates that thinking is a practiced concept all the times where we need it, like in ibadah or in our in ibadah, or whether it's in our work or any other life endeavors, or when we read the Quran. Or so it's, all the time you are practicing tafakkur or thinking. Okay, another phenomenon, and this is what Malik bin Nabi calls it. He calls it a phenomenon. Is that 17 present forms of the verb of thinking or tafakkur is used in plural form. It's used in plural form, okay, which signifies the importance of collective thinking in Islam. Okay, collective thinking. And this also necessitates for the Muslims to institutionalize the thinking or the tafakkur, or that the collective thinking to be institutionalized. So like is all our institutions, whether it is the family institution, at the level of family institution, whether it is the community members institution, or whether any other organization or company, or in any way possible, the Muslims are encouraged to share their thinking, and that is a good thing. One thing, like scholars say, that the collective shura, okay, the collective shura, or the mutual consultation. That's why in let's say in universities, like we do practice it when it comes to publishing, when it comes to reviewing, whether it's reviewing academic work, whether it is also a thesis, master thesis, or PhD thesis. We usually will go for evaluation, and it would be done like at least by 2 to 3 people. And here where we have people sharing their views and ideas. That is the beauty of collective thinking and practicing collective thinking in Islam. One more thing is when it comes to collective thinking, now many scholars are calling for the ijtihad when it comes to ijtihad, which is one of the practices, by the way, where we need to exercise thinking at its highest level, is also now done in a collective manner or way. We have, it's no longer, we still maybe have individual ijtihad, but now there is a greater efforts of collective ijtihad. So this is again the beauty of collective thinking in Islam as it is reflected in the Quranic perspective. Okay, another phenomenon in the Quran is, we did mention about the usage of the verb tafakkara. Okay, tafakkarun, tatafakkarun. Here we are talking about another 30 terms related to thinking. The Quran uses over 30 terms, other terms. By the way, we will have another session, maybe the next one, which will be dedicated for this issue, thinking terminology in the Quran. The Quran uses over 30 terms, all related to thinking. And these terms also are being used in the Quran numerous times, many times. Okay, that's another phenomenon. It can be claimed that these terms are different levels of thinking. Most of the scholars, they say that there is no, we cannot treat it as synonyms, rather than they are different, different aspects of thinking or different levels of thinking. Okay, and this is discussed in details in my book, by the way. This leads, what would be the implication? This leads to infusing thinking in the minds and the hearts of the Quran reciter. You know, because these 30 terms or 31 terms with tafakkara or thinking itself, the term for thinking. So it will come around 31 terms. So being used for many times in the Quran and in different surahs and in different ayat verses, this will help to infuse thinking in the minds and the hearts of the reciter or the reader. It's not me who's saying that, rather than the experts, those who are, even the Westerns now, when they talk about infusing thinking, we have one session, by the way, infusing thinking in classroom, which they say that the best way to infuse thinking in the classroom, this is a message to all of you, to the educators, to teachers, is to use these thinking terms. So when you talk, you need to use these thinking terms, different thinking terms, if you want your students to think and to also experience and exert the effort for thinking. So these are the This is the implication of using all these 31 terms in the Quran for thinking numerously. Okay, the next, this will lead us also to a very important important issue, and that is status of thinking in Islam. What is the status of thinking in Islam? It's very amazing that Islam itself, accepting Islam, is based on intellectual ability. You know, when you read the books of fiqh, jurisprudence, when they discuss about accepting Islam, the first thing comes is the intellectual ability, al-aql. If a person has the intellectual ability, then he is responsible for choices, making choices. So like when you make a choice, making choice is a decision, and decision is based on thinking. As a Khalifa or a steward, Allah created us with this ability, with this intellectual ability. So if it's there, then a person becomes responsible for his or her decisions and choices, making choice, including making a choice to accept Islam. Okay. The second issue when it comes to status of thinking in Islam is that thinking is an obligation. It's an obligation. Wajib. The term fiqh is called wajib. It's an obligation. So like it's not just preferable act, mandub. It's not just mubah. You know, we have mubah, we have 3 levels. Mubah means it's lawful or allowed or acceptable, but then the second is preferable. Preferable is mandub. The third level of ahkam, of rulings in Islam, when a ruling is an obligation, like it's an obligation to pray. Okay, it's an obligation to perform Hajj. It's an obligation to fast Ramadan. The same, it is an obligation to think, to exercise thinking. It's an obligation. Okay. However, and one of the early, not early, actually, Muslim intellectuals who wrote a book about this is Al-Ustad Abbas Al-Aqad. He has a book, but I don't know whether it's translated into English. We may need to do that. It's a booklet. It's only a few pages. I mean, I think maybe 50 or 60 pages. It's about that thinking is a must. Thinking in Islam is a must. Al-tafkiru darura. It's a must. It's not only a must, it's a necessity. If you want to go for the right interpretation, it's a necessity. Okay? However, what makes the Islamic perspective, we talk about the Islamic perspective when it comes to thinking, practicing this obligation means that it will be a rewarded ibadah or obligation, worship, an act of worship. It's ibadah. And it's rewardable. So when you think, you are rewarded. This
okay.
is.
Let me hear how you say this part of the name.
So it's maybe please those who please mute your microphones. Okay. Uh, this is back to the issue that what makes the Islamic perspective so significant if we compare it to other perspectives. Okay, we know to start with that thinking is a universal phenomena. I mean, everyone is thinking, whether you are a Muslim or non-Muslim, whether you are from another ideology or from another religion, thinking is universal. Okay, but we talk about the Islamic perspective. What what makes the Islamic perspective so significant is that to to get the rewards for exercising thinking in Islam, it has to fulfill certain conditions. Okay, it has to fulfill certain conditions. I don't know, maybe I want to suggest that one of the early theses in UIA, it was 1997 maybe, Sister Wahida from Canada, her master thesis was on maybe creative thinking in Islam. I referred to her thesis in my textbook, and it's in English. I would appreciate it, maybe Prof. Umar, if we can have a look at it to evaluate the work. Maybe if it's publishable, maybe we can go for publishing that work. Okay, she is the wife of one of our staff from Iraq, Professor Ahmad Yusuf. Anyway, she talks about in one chapter about the conditions for exercising thinking and creativity. Okay, but I focus on three conditions: that it should be positive, useful, and practiced with sincerity to be considered or rewarded as a ibadah. So it should be positive, not negative, and it should be useful, which means inflicting no harm. It shouldn't lead to any harm. Look at so many creative inventions today, including the weapons of mass destruction, and you can see it's creative, but it's causing harm. It's inflicting harm on humanity. So in Islam, thinking only can be considered as ibadah and rewarded ibadah if it is practiced with being sure that it is useful. And here I would like to bring the issue for the Nobel Prize selection for every year that I had the chance to attend a workshop by Nobel Prize laureates, and they have mentioned that to consider someone to be, eligible for Nobel Prize, one thing has to, one of the criteria is that whatever the invention or the contribution of such a scholar, whether in chemistry, medicine, or any other area, it should be beneficial, valuable to humanities, to all humans. So that is one of the criteria used for the selection. And here I want to relate it to also to the Islamic perspective. Okay, the last issue here for the status of thinking is that the purpose of creation, when we have been created, this is mentioned in the Quran itself, that we have been created for two purposes, and that's so great. One is to worship Allah, and the other one is to establish civilization, the Islamic civilization, based on Tawheed and Islamic values. Both requires thinking and creativity. Both requires creativity and thinking. Okay, so this is another great thing about when it comes to Islamic perspective. Now, how Islam motivates and promotes creativity and thinking. Okay, it is recorded by Al-Imam Muslim that the Prophet ﷺ said, whosoever innovates a good practice in Islam, there is for him or her its rewards and rewards of those who act upon it after him. Subhanallah. So this is a great encouragement, promoting creativity and thinking here, you know, it's for sure there is an incident, you know, like the incident was someone who was in need from the community came to the Prophet ﷺ and asked him for help. And then the Prophet ﷺ asked for volunteering to help. And one person went to his place and brought something from his house and shared it with that needy person or man. And then after that, people were motivated or encouraged to do the same, to do the same thing. Okay, so to help that needy person. That led the Prophet ﷺ to say this hadith. And as you see, the hadith is a principle. And this is the great Islamic worldview, one of the great characteristics of the Islamic worldview, that any incident or event will be a chance to come up with a lesson, to come up with a principle, where this principle can apply to not to only that incident, but rather to you know, to other areas. I know, I want to share with you, 20 years ago, one doctor, I met that doctor in, I believe either in Mecca or Medina, and he told me about their great program. What is their program? That doctors, usually they will be given 45 days for vacation in some Muslim countries, like in the Gulf area. So this doctor initiated an issue that any doctor, he is the first to do that, to share 2 weeks of their, you know, out of their 45 days, to share 10 days to 2 weeks and go to a country, Muslim country, where there are, you know, like this doctor was a cardiologist, and نسأل الله لنا ولكم العافية. And you know that some cardiologies, operations and surgery requires a lot of money, up to $10,000 US dollars. So this doctor volunteered for 2 weeks to do these operations for the heart, the people who are with the heart problems and cannot afford to pay for the surgery. Okay, so you can see it's not just in ibadah. That the reason I'm bringing this example and share it with you is that it can be applied to any area. So this led to that they started a program where it becomes now more organized, and a number of doctors would go to different countries in Africa, in Asia, where there is a needy people for this treatment. Alhamdulillah, and they share their experience and time and effort and contribute to solving medical problems or issues that some people suffers in the Muslim world, but they cannot afford to pay for that. Okay, so this is just a result of this hadith. You can say that any similar introduction of us, like in Malaysia, I like to share with my participants also, maybe 10 years ago or so, they started a new program where the Zakat institution in Malaysia, they created an SMS system where people, like, you know, Zakatul Fitr should be paid within the last 24 hours of Ramadan. Okay, so they created a system. You can pay this zakat from anywhere in no time, in less than 2 minutes. There is you can text to a specific number, the amount of money that you'd like to pay, and it is there with the zakat institution in Malaysia. And they do have the database for the needy people in the society and the community, alhamdulillah, where they will, this contribution will be delivered to the correct or the right person. Okay. Another thing in motivating, how Islam motivates and promotes creativity, is the hadith, authentic hadith, where the Prophet ﷺ says, if the innovative scholar, إذا اجتهد المجتهد, by the way, these scholars say that this applies to leaders and scholars. If the innovative scholar, al-mujtahid, so it applies in this innovative scholar is either the leader or the jurist, does his best effort in exercising ijtihad or creativity. I like to call ijtihad creativity, exercising ijtihad. If he is right, he earns a reward twofolds, and if he is wrong, he will still earn one reward. And you see, even if the person, how Islam motivates and promotes creativity, even the scholar or the leader is wrong, he still get a reward. Okay, so this is called, by the way, appreciating the effort. So the reward that he gets, not for being wrong, but rather than appreciating the effort, making the effort. That's what the scholars say about this hadith. So in this way, I believe that the scholars, if it was the other way around, the hadith itself is put in a creative manner or way. Okay? In what way? Because if you follow the logic, you know, if you are right, you are rewarded. If you are wrong, then you are sinful or you will be punished. That's the logical, if you want, you go with the logical argument. But the hadith says, if you are right, you get 2 rewards. If you are wrong, you still get 1 reward. Look how great is that motivation and appreciation of the effort to be creative. Okay. Thinking and Islamic world view. Okay, there is one thing, by the way, the essence of this slide is taken from, I would like you to have a look at the book of Datu Professor Abdul Hamid Abu Sulaiman. I think there is a summary of the book in 11 pages, okay, published by IIIT, and I would like to encourage all of you to read that book. The book is about 200 over pages, The Quranic World View. So this slide is actually just a glimpse, okay? We mentioned earlier that we have been created for 2 purposes. One of them is to be Khalifa or steward. That's the word that also Datu Abdul Hamid Abu Sulaiman prefers to use. Usually in English it is vicegerent, but I saw that Datu Abdul Abu Sulaiman prefer to call it steward or stewardship, al-khilafa. Okay, now what is the main thing is to fulfill that objective or purpose. Allah created us with special faculties and capabilities to deal with challenges. So Datu Abdul Hamid Abu Sulaiman points out that when Allah says وَعَلَّمَ آدَمَ الْأَسْمَاءَ كُلَّهَا, actually Allah created man, humans, all humans with the same abilities, whether it is you know, no matter the color or the ethnicity, whether also the gender, male or female, we are created with the same capabilities. Okay, there is one beautiful article in Encyclopedia of Creativity. It's 2 volumes, more than 1,000 pages. There is one article about creativity and gender. There are many books also written by Western thinkers, and most of the research findings I share with you, most of the research findings is that there is no difference, much difference, in generally speaking, between men and women, between male and female, or also whether that, as we said also, whether from this ethnicity or that ethnicity, from this part of the world or that part of the world, regardless of the color, we are all created with the same, and this is emphasized in the Quran, by the way, okay? And Anyway, we have been created with those capabilities to solve a problem, to reason. Just to share with you, this is all taken from the book of Dr. Abdul Hamid. So that, why? So that we can, deal with the challenges and the issues that we encounter in establishing civilization. Okay. Another thing which is also very apparent is that being a steward, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this is part of the Islamic worldview. Everything in this world has been created by Allah with taskhir. Sakhara lakum, is made subservient. Look around, all the substances, all, whether it is the sea, the mountains, this or that, everything on this earth or in the sea has been created for humans, for the steward. Okay. Now, let's go for the ways and means, the next issue, through which Islam encourages creativity. We can see that Islam encouraged, it's not just motivating, it's not just promoting. So we have looked at promoting and, promoting and encouraging, or motivating us to think and to be creative. But now, in what ways? Number one, commanding all mankind, whether Muslims or not Muslims, to deliberate, to ponder and reflect in the numerous Quranic verses and ahadith. So we have been commanded. So it's not just, it's beyond encouragement. It's a command. It's a command. We are commanded to deliberate, to ponder, to reflect, okay, to think. So that's very important issue. Number two, providing, you see, that is not enough. Providing various thinking styles and preferences and modes of thinking. And this is, we will have one session for that. Quran uses about 15 or more thinking styles: inquisitive, visual, objective, positive, reflective, rational, emotional, analogical, metaphorical. All these different thinking styles are used in the Quran deliberately, and is like used in an effective way to communicate the message of Islam, the message of Quran. Okay, we will have one session for that, so I will not spend more time on this. Number three, okay, commanding, that's number one. Number two, providing examples, providing styles of thinking. How do we think? Okay, different modes of thinking, visual, this, that. That's not enough. That's what I learned from some books teaching critical thinking, written by some Westerns thinkers, that we do in promoting thinking in classroom. We always tell our students, you have to think. You have to think. That's not enough. Encouraging them and commanding them to think is one thing, but you need to teach them the thinking skills, the thinking styles and the thinking skills. Okay? So that is also provided in the Quran. That's not enough. Number 3, providing a big room for practicing creativity. You see, that's very important. So like also in our teaching is you encourage your students. You also provide skills. You teach them how to think. You teach them the skills. But number 3, that's why through training, through exercise, you need to give them a chance to practice what they learn. You know, so that's what Islam has done exactly. Command us to think, provide the thinking styles. Number 3, providing a big room for practicing creativity and thinking. In 2 major areas, ijtihad and establishing Islamic civilization. And these are the purposes of creation that we mentioned earlier. Okay? For establishing the civilization, there are 2 sub-areas. One is exploring and discovering universal divine laws, Sunanullah, As-Sunanul Rabbaniya, As-Sunanul Ilahiyya, exploring and discovering social divine laws. So you have, the first one is applied science, and the second one is human sciences. So, and the first one, ijtihad, is in religious practices. So you can see here all fields of knowledge, all spheres, all disciplines are covered. There is a room in every single discipline or area or field of knowledge. And that is another great, great feature or characteristic of Islamic perspective when it comes to thinking. Now we go to the last issue, observations about divine laws. There are the divine laws that I mentioned are available for both Muslims and non-Muslims, because you know, people keep asking. This is not only, yes, the divine laws are available. Usually, you know, but it's usually, by the way, for the first to reveal, to discover, to discover the divine law, whether it's social or universal. However, not to forget that through the history, whether the early history or nowadays, you can see the contributions of Muslim scholars when it comes to creativity and innovation, in all spheres of or disciplines of knowledge. Another observation is that when it comes to those divine laws, they are the laws itself, either positive or negative. It's actually neutral. The law itself is neutral, but the use or the application of the law can be either positive or negative. However, for the Islamic perspective, it encourages only the positive application, only the positive application. As we earlier mentioned, that it should be useful and positive. Whatever the innovation or the invention, it should be positive and useful. Okay. What is the significance? This is maybe the, well, we can skip that one. We already, I believe, already finished the allocated time for the. Okay, here is something maybe I can share with you. This is the last slide. Al-Imam al-Shafi'i says, knowledge is not that which you could be memorized, which can be memorized, could be memorized, but that which is beneficial, so great. This emphasizes, you see, this is a saying by Al-Imam al-Shafi'i. This emphasizes the positive aspect of creativity in Islam. And by the way, just to finalize, when it comes to the Western perspective, the early, you know, like when you talk about 40 or maybe 50, about 50 years ago, or up to 60 years ago, the early writings on the Western perspective is that they emphasize on originality, genuinity and originality, that the work should be, the invention should be original. But they don't talk about the other, you know, like usefulness, the value of what you invent. That one was not an issue. Lately, we have books on value-based. There is a book that I had the chance to go through, value-based thinking. It's one of the good books written by, but it's written only about, I believe, in 1 decade and a half, maybe about 15 years ago. Okay, that's a good book also, value-based thinking. And that is, that title of the book by a Western scholar, summarizes the main characteristic of the Islamic perspective in thinking. And that is, it is a value-based thinking. It's a value-based thinking. Maybe can conclude with this beautiful saying of Imam al-Shafi'i and quotations from other scholars, non-Muslim scholars as well. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help us to apprehend, comprehend, understand, appreciate all these valuable what we call it knowledge, or of the Islamic perspective when it comes to thinking and creativity. Allahumma ameen. Wa sallallahu ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Thank you very much, Professor Jamal Ahmad Badi, for this very insightful presentation about encouragement of thinking in Islam. Inshallah, I think all of us, after this lecture, we shall start thinking. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Subhanaka Allahumma bihamdik. نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. السلام عليكم.
عليكم السلام.